You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Now get the guns, the drugs, to my generation will take the fall. The saints will cause the nation, and it's a sex, the gods, the fakes, the frauds, they're messing with me. Come on, come on, come on, let's get it out. Move to the music, play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Hey yo, welcome back to Reliving the War and welcome to the 8th of May 2000. Raw's in Long Island, New York while Nitro's in St. Louis, Missouri. DDP done the JOB on the PPV named Slamboree. David Arquette is no longer WCW Champion, but he is now part of the New Blood. The Ready to Rumble cage match ended with Jeff Jarrett winning the gold, and as an added bonus, Chris Kanyon got thrown off the cage by Mike Awesome. At the very beginning of Nitro this week, we see DDP sitting beside Kenyon's hospital bed. This was taped earlier in the evening. The New Blood decided to pay Kenyon a visit and DDP got destroyed. It was Kimberly Page who stopped the beatdown, but she did pour Kenyon's piss all over her soon-to-be ex-husband. We then see the Millionaires Club arriving to the arena. Shivani mentions that the club's unifying with other WCW stars in order to take down the New Blood, so we'll see how that works out on this week's show. Raw begins with an Edge and Christian Tag Team Open Challenge. On Nitro, we've got a New Blood promo. The WWF Tag Team Champions have bought themselves some protection. The APA are here with Edge and Christian. Christian explains that the champs hired Farouk and Bradshaw so no one will interfere in their next match. Edge says the people of Long Island don't have very pretty faces, so for the benefit of those with flash photography, the customary 5-second pose has been extended to 6 seconds. How generous. Christian hopes that the APA can stay sober while protecting the boys for this open challenge. The champs then get ready for their challengers to come down to the ring, but Bradshaw says the APA aren't even sober right now. Farouk gives Edge and Christian a full 100% refund because the APA don't want to feel guilty about what they're about to do, and the Acolytes attack the champs. It's the APA who's going to answer this open challenge. The crowd chant APA as Christian takes a double shoulder block before Bradshaw puts him down with a fallaway slam. A blind tag allows Edge to perform a missile dropkick, but he then telegraphs a back body drop. Farouk comes in and he ends up taking a DDT, so his big Texan partner gets another tag and Edge takes a back suplex. The champs then take the opportunity to double team Bradshaw while the referee's back was turned, but as expected, Farouk ends up getting the hot tag and Christian takes a spine buster while Edge takes a double spine buster. The ref turns his back again, Christian nails Ron with the ring bell. Bradshaw decides to use the bell on the tag team champions, but the referee saw this attack. Edge and Christian win via disqualification, and after the match, Bossman and Bull Buchanan attack the Acolytes. We see Buchanan's big top rope leg drop, which is impressive no doubt, but these two dumb son of a guns have a tag match themselves later on against Too Cool, so yeah, I wonder how that's going to end. On Nitro, David Arquette comes to the ring alongside Mike Awesome, Eric Bischoff, The Cat, Kimberly Page and new world champion Jeff Jarrett. Bischoff says Jarrett's at the top once again and it was all thanks to Arquette and one of the biggest swerves in wrestling history. Bischoff then rolled some footage while explaining that from day one, David winning the World Championship was all a setup and the whole idea was to just screw over Diamond Dallas Page. Eric then points out that the internet fans complained about Arquette winning the championship, but Bischoff doesn't care because it all led to DDP getting humiliated and that's all that matters. David then endears himself to the fans at Nitro tonight.
Shut up!
He then jokingly apologises to DDP and Kenyon. He says these boys really should have known not to trust someone from Hollywood, and David's just happy that he was able to call himself the world champion while helping Eric Bischoff. The crowd boos when Jeff calls himself the chosen one, but we then quickly cut over to DDP pulling into the arena. Kimberly then takes shots at Page while Mike Awesome wonders what life's going to be like for Dallas now that he has to look after Kenyon every day of the week, but then Dallas shows up and the fight's on. Mike Awesome gets taken out first, the Cat gets sent out of the ring, Arquette tries to escape but David takes the diamond cutter. Must say, he took it well too. But then the numbers game catches up to Dallas and our guy needs a little help. Sting comes out to back Dallas up and these two make easy work of the New Blood. When more heels show up, Chronic make an appearance to even the odds, and it ends with the four babyfaces cleaning house. After a commercial break, Eric announces a DDP vs Mike Awesome match while getting interviewed by Mean Gene. This is going to be a stretcher match. He also books Sting vs Jeff Jarrett for our main event, and the world title will be on the line. Jarrett's not happy about this, but Bischoff tells the champ not to worry. Eazy-E has a plan. Norman Smiley's going to get fired if he can't take the hardcore title away from Terry Funk. Ralphus understands the assignment, I think. So we've got Screaming Norman versus the Dirty Funker in our next Nitro match. On Raw, we've got a Triple H promo. On SmackDown, Earl Hebner got his ass kicked by D-Generation X after the senior official teamed up with The Rock for a main event tag match. Hunter says Hebner's jaw's a bit mangled right now and his eyes are swollen shut, so he's been unable to reply to everyone's get well letters. Hebner stuck his nose in D-Generation X's business, so Earl got what he deserved. If you try to stop the inevitable, that being Triple H regaining the WWF title, then you're gonna get messed up. Judgment Day is coming soon. Hunter says he's gonna face The Rock one-on-one at the pay-per-view for the WWF Championship. Only this time there's gonna be no Stone Cold Steve Austin, there's gonna be no Linda McMahon, and of course there's gonna be no Earl Hebner. Triple H wants to separate the men from the boys by finding out who the true WWF ring general is, so Hunter wants to face Rock in a match that many people in the back are afraid to compete in. He wants to go to the one place where only a few men have gone. So at Judgment Day, Triple H wants to face The Rock in a 60-minute Iron Man match. The last time such a match happened was back at WrestleMania 12 when Shawn Michaels defeated Bret Hart. Hunter wonders if Rock can go the distance. Can The Rock really go 60 minutes against the game? Hunter thinks Rock can't do it. The WWF Champion will know at the end of Judgment Day that Triple H has no equal. He'll know Hunter's the game, and he'll know Triple H is that damn good. Just as Vince McMahon was about to speak, the Y2J countdown appears on the Titantron. And check it out, Jericho's the new Intercontinental Champion. Y2J won the belt on SmackDown when he beat Chris Benoit, and a bit later on he also punched Vince McMahon right in the face. Jericho says it was pure instinct, he couldn't help but to punch Vince's lights out. And after making fun of Stephanie and Shane, Jericho says the only reason Vince became a billionaire was to make up for having a very small penis. This gets a great reaction from the audience, and when the regime go to head up the ramp, they quickly stop when the Dudleys, Big Show and Rikishi come out to back Y2J up. Vince then says he's got a set of grapefruits. Grapefruits grow on trees, and all trees have a trunk. By the end of Raw, Jericho's gonna wish he was dangling from the edge of Vince's trunk, because tonight Chris is gonna defend his IC belt against Kurt Angle, and McMahon guarantees that Jericho will lose the Intercontinental Championship tonight. Shane wonders why the Big Show's here. These two used to be buddies. But Shane delivers a hard truth to the big man. He's being an idiot pretending to be other wrestlers every week. One way or another, Shane and the Big Show will settle their differences tonight. And as for the Dudleys, Bubba Ray and Devon are going to compete in a tables match against Jerry Brisco. Okay then. Pat Patterson's also going to face Rikishi, but Vince has some sort of plan. He says there's a fine line between insanity and genius, and whatever happens in these matches, McMahon will end up proving how smart he really is. So, did Norman Smiley beat Terry Funk for the hardcore title? No, he didn't. He wanted Monday Night Ralphus to take the first shot, but as expected, our main man got wrecked. And what followed was your usual hardcore action through the audience and into the backstage area. Norman took control of a golf cart, and a portion of the match was just Norman driving around the concourse, but he then drove into a conveniently stacked wall of crates when Terry hitched a ride. Ralphus failed when trying to attack Terry with a bacon tray, and it ended with Terry hitting Ralphus and Norman a total of 14 times with his own bacon tray. It's a pinfall win for Terry Funk, and that means Norman and Ralphus are done as WCW performers. I'm sure we'll see both of them next week. The Chris Jericho vs Kurt Angle match is up next on Raw. On Nitro, Ric Flair's going to address his legendary son, David Flair. Chris defeated Angle clean as a whistle. The two had a decent match, with the highlight being this overhead belly to belly from Kurt. But Jericho made Angle tap out to the walls of Jericho, and Chris escaped the match with his IC belt. Shane McMahon watched the bout backstage, but he got interrupted by the Big Show. Shane tries to explain that he ripped into the big man because he wanted to piss him off. He wanted to see the old Big Show, who Shane took to the main event of WrestleMania. And Shane says he wants to join forces with the Big Show once again by putting him in an IC title match against Chris Jericho tonight on Raw. It's not because Chris just beat Kurt Angle, it's not because Jericho said terrible things about Stephanie, it's because Shane knows the Big Show can be someone. Big Show eases up, he agrees to wrestle this match, so maybe Vince was right, maybe Jericho won't leave Raw tonight with his IC belt. On Nitro, Ric Flair carries the NWA World title to the ring alongside a replica of the big gold belt, and Rick explains the first time he ever saw the NWA belt, it was around the waist of Jack Brisco. He then saw the belt with Terry Funk, Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes, and Flair then decided it was his turn to wear the championship. Flair and his NWA contemporaries gave up their lives to be the world champion. The big gold belt then came into play, and yeah, that's a pretty shitty replica right there. And Flair explains that these two belts mean nothing to him now after what his son David did at Slamboree.
There's actually been a number of different versions of the big gold belt featured on both WCW and WWE television throughout the decades, some of which you can see behind me here. Now, the version that Ric Flair uses on this edition of Nitro is commonly referred to as the Vegas Big Gold and was created in the early 90s when Ric Flair worked for the WWF. You see Ric Flair enter the company claiming to be the real world's champion, sporting the original NWA/WCW Crumb Rind Big Gold World Heavyweight Championship, as WCW fired him while he was still champion and while he was in possession of the physical belt. Unfortunately, WCW filed an injunction preventing the WWF from using that belt on TV any further. So WWF, being them, decided, well, we're just going to create our own version of the championship and use that, and no one will know the difference. While that belt was being created, however, they had Ric Flair walk around on television with a modified WWF Tag Team Championship belt, digitally covering it up, hoping that no one would know the difference. Spoiler, we all noticed the difference. The Vegas Big Gold would debut, funny enough, in a segment with Ric Flair in Las Vegas, thus being dubbed the Vegas Big Gold. The hope for the WWF was that the championship belt would be similar enough to the original WCW Big Gold that people would confuse the two and think it was the genuine article, but different enough so that no lawsuit could prevent it from being used, as it was so similar to the original. Some stuff was changed around, the wording was moved, the crown was removed, and the stones were in a different area, but you could see it was clearly based on WCW's Big Gold, which is why, as part of the lawsuit and the settlement, the championship was removed from television and could no longer be used. Fortunately, Ric Flair actually captured the WWF Championship at the Royal Rumble in '92, shortly after this legal mess. With the WWF's permission, Ric Flair actually maintained possession of the Vegas Big Gold belt, later using it on this segment on WCW Nitro. When he rejoined the WWF at the end of 2001, he became close friends with Triple H, eventually gifting Triple H the Vegas Big Gold belt, with Triple H still to this day having it displayed in a case in his home office. And that is the very abridged version of the history of the Vegas Big Gold belt.
Rick wants old Raccoon Eyes to come out and admit he made a mistake. David needs to make things right and be a good son. And hey, there he is.
Your dad is lucky to be alive, so David, you better apologize. Your actions at Slamboree made us sick. You gotta stop being a silly little dick. When did you sell your soul? Gonna get a boot stuck right up your hole. Leave the new blood, just leave it all, or you'll still be sucking big, enormous balls.
Vince Russo joins David and Daffney, and Russo hugs Flair Jr. when the two get in the ring. Rick's like, what the fuck's going on here then? Russo says there's t-shirts currently being made, they say tradition sucks, and last night Vince Russo spat in the face of tradition. He pulls out a list of other people he spat on last night as someone holds up a sign saying I'd rather be at Raw. And the names on Russo's list include Dory Funk Jr., Dick the Bruiser, Jack Brisco, DiBiase, Murdoch, Brody, Dusty, and Sam Mushnick of St. Louis. Russo says David's now standing beside the father he never had. What the hell? And Rick tells his son to catch a grip. Flair told David he'd get manipulated before he even got in the business, and David needs to stand beside his real dad right now, but Flair Jr. says he's mad at his real dad. David's not going anywhere, while Russo wants to see a Flair versus Flair match at the Great American Bash. Rick doesn't want a personal issue aired on TV, and Flair even pulls out his phone while saying he'll call Vince McMahon right now and get David booked on Raw next week. Rick says David will be a big star if he shows up on Raw, which completely undermines this entire Nitro show, and even the crowd popped when Rick mentioned the competition. It's absolutely nuts. After getting promised work on Raw's War next week, David gives his dad a big hug. Rick then goes after Russo. The mistake Rick made here was turning his back on his absolute bastard of a son, because David smashes another miniature Statue of Liberty over Rick's head, and that's how it ends. Russo says he and David will see Rick at the Great American Bash, so that match is now official. Keep in mind that Rick originally thought he was going to get a world title shot at the pay-per-view. After a commercial break, we see Rick leaving the arena. Not sure why he just doesn't call Vince McMahon himself, seeing as he has him on speed dial, but who cares? Rick claims he's done with the wrestling business, so see you later, Nitch. Next on Raw, we've got Eddie Guerrero versus the Godfather. On Nitro, Chuck Palumbo cuts a promo, plus we've got Shawn Stasiak versus Captain Rection. Fuck's sake. The Godfather wanted Chyna to join the hoe train. He was willing to give up his hoes if Chyna became his newest employee. Chyna is flattered by the offer, but she politely rejects Godfather by slapping him with a bunch of roses, and the bell rings as Eddie hits a dropkick from behind. Godfather instantly goes on offense, and it seems he's a little mad about getting turned down. Chyna looks on as Latino Heat looks to be in a lot of trouble, and it gets so bad that Eddie has to beg for a timeout. He tries to crawl to Chyna, but all this does is distract the referee, allowing Godfather to hit a low blow, and Godfather follows up with his whole train finisher. It ends with Chyna getting on the apron and D'Lo hitting the ring to hit his old partner with a sky high. Guerrero then wins the match following a missile dropkick, and so Latino Heat does it again and he leaves Raw with his European belt. On Nitro, the Total Packages music plays in the arena, but Chuck Palumbo walks out. He gets in the ring, he copies Lex's little pose routine, and Chuck introduces himself as the main event Chuck Palumbo. This boy has 3% body fat, unlike the chunky Total Package and his 4% body fat, and Palumbo says if Lex has the guts to come down for a fight right now, he's more than welcome to. The delivery was absolutely brutal, and Chuck definitely needed some more time in promo class. This wasn't good at all. Lex comes out, he tells Elizabeth to wait on the rampway, and as Luger goes to work on Chuck, members of R&B security come down to bring Liz back to her master, Vince Russo. Lex tries to stop the security team, but he ends up getting whacked by Palumbo's muscle flexor, and it looks like the Total Package has been knocked out cold. Liz gets brought to Russo as Package gets put in an ambulance, and Russo reminds Liz that she has a WCW contract, not a Lex Luger manager contract. Russo's tired of Liz trying to fight him, so tonight Miss Elizabeth's gonna earn her money. She's gonna have her very first ever wrestling match, and she's gonna face Daffney. If Liz wins, Russo promises to release her from her WCW contract, and look, Russo even came prepared and he's got some gear for Liz to compete in. Back in the ring, we get to see Shawn Stasiak versus Captain Rection, lucky us, and it appears that Curt Hennig's had a change of heart. Curt helped Stasiak out of the corner, which allowed Shawn to win with a perfect plex, but Shawn's not getting away so easily. Curt heads up the ramp just as Kevin Nash shows up, and Nash drops Shawn with a jackknife before grabbing a microphone. Nash wants to speak directly to Vince Russo. Russo hit Nash with a baseball bat at Slamboree, but Big Kev says Russo will have to come face to face with Big Sexy tonight. Kev thought he was friends with Russo. It was Nash who helped bring Russo back to the company, but when Kevin tells Russo to get down to the ring, he instead gets greeted by the Filthy Animals. Nash chuckles when Kidman says Kev needs to know his place on the scrotum pole. Russo's way too busy worrying about the real stars to even care about a washed up jabroni like Kev. And Conan says screw the Wolfpack before confirming that the Filthy Animals are indeed back in WCW. The group launch an attack that sees Rey Mysterio smack Nash with a baseball bat, so out comes Wood from the hood to back up his old NWO teammate. The Animals leave the ring, Nash picks up the microphone again, and Kev says when you're on top of the mountain, it's real hard for punks like Kidman and company to knock them off. Kev throws out a challenge, he and Hogan versus the Animals in a street fight, and Hogan says he and Nash are going to go to the back, take a Russo and wipe their Bischoffs. I hope they don't do this together. And later tonight, Hogan and Nash are going to beat the shit out of the Filthy Animals. DDP faces Mike Awesome in a stretcher match next on Nitro, while over on Raw, the Dudleys take on Jerry Brisco in a tables match. Well, it was originally going to be Jerry Brisco all on his own, but he introduces his tag team partners Test and Albert before the action begins. Jerry was put through a table on SmackDown last week, but it looks like Mr. McMahon's helping his stooge get a little revenge tonight on Raw. Thanks to the 3-on-2 advantage, Brisco was able to do a little damage to Bubba Ray Dudley. He even pulled off a leg drop just to show he could still go, but moments later Brisco fell victim to the Dudley's signature diving headbutt, and it looked like Jerry was done for. In comes Devon and Brisco pulls off a sick double underhook suplex. I was starting to think Brisco didn't need any help at all, but Big Test came in to get a piece of the action. The table eventually finds its way into the ring, and it's Test who sets it up after flooring Devon. Test tries a gut-wrench powerbomb, Devon avoids it, and the Dudleys win the match after performing a 3D on the big man. The Dudleys then target Brisco, but DX, minus Triple H, run down to help Jerry out. Unfortunately, the numbers are too much, and Bubba once again gets distracted by a female in the ring. I've no idea what his problem is, but he takes an X Factor before getting set up on another table. Jerry Brisco then dives off the top rope with a big splash and Bubba goes through the furniture. And the Stooge then celebrates by imitating Hulk Hogan while Real American plays in the arena. Following this, a promo video airs for Judgment Day. It features these creepy little girls playing in what looks like a furnace room, and yeah, I think everyone knew what this meant when the promo aired. Judgment Day is coming, ladies and gents. Strap yourselves in. We have a stretcher match on Nitro, and to win this one, you gotta beat your opponent up so badly that he has to get stretchered out of the arena. Eric Bischoff and Kimberly join the commentary team to watch DDP versus Awesome, and very early on, Mike Awesome gets up close and personal with his New Blood teammates. Back in the ring, Awesome takes control briefly, but he goes down after a Uranagi that looked great. Page's follow-up head scissor takedown unfortunately didn't look so great, but the main thing is DDP's got the advantage. Kimberly then pulls out the divorce papers in an effort to distract Dallas. The plan works as DDP rips those papers up only to take a chair shot seconds later from Awesome. Another shot follows and Awesome performs a DDT on the chair, and to make sure Page is leaving the arena tonight on that stretcher, Mike performs a second DDT. We think it's all over as Dallas gets rolled out of the ring, but Page makes one more effort to fight back, and this, unfortunately, was a mistake. Mike sets up a table and we see an Awesome bomb through the wood, and Eric helps an unconscious DDP sign his divorce papers before putting Dallas back on the stretcher. That's it over. Another dominant performance from the New Blood. Kim's happy to get Dallas' signature, but I'm not sure this would hold up in a court of law. A tired Chris Jericho defends his IC title next against the Big Show on Raw. On Nitro, we've got a Scott Steiner promo. Jericho looks absolutely shattered after his match against Kurt Angle, and not only does he have to deal with the Big Show, he's also got to deal with Shane McMahon lurking around the outside of the ring. A big clothesline puts Y2J on the canvas and a sidekick sends Chris out of the ring. He is able to fight back a little and he gets back inside before the Big Show, but then he tries a plancha and Chris gets caught in midair before getting dumped back into the ring. He's a strong boy, is that Big Show. Show misses a corner back elbow, Chris delivers a missile dropkick followed by the Lion Salt. The Big Show powers his way out of Jericho's cover, and after performing a huge gorilla press slam, footage gets shown on the Titantron from Shane and Show's little meeting earlier on. When Big Show left the room, Shane made fun of him. He said he owned the Big Show while talking to someone on the phone, and this causes the challenger to abort the match as he chases the Boy Wonder around the ring and up the rampway. Chris Jericho wins via countout. His Intercontinental belt is still safe for now, but the question is, who played the video on the Titantron? Big Show chases Shane all the way to his limousine. Vince says this is the first time Shane's ever drove himself anywhere in his entire life. And when Stephanie reminds her dad that Jericho's still the Intercontinental Champion, Mr. McMahon books Y2J in his third match. Tonight's main event will feature Jericho defending his IC belt again, and this time it's against former champion Chris Benoit. On Nitro, Vince Russo wants Scott Steiner to take out Kevin Nash, and Scott tells Vince, in no uncertain terms, to go fuck himself. Scott takes orders from no one. Vince then has a short meeting with Tank Abbott. We have no idea what was discussed here, but the US champion makes his way down to the ring to cut a promo. Scott reminds everyone that he beat Hugh G. Rection at Slamboree, and after the match he took his freaks to his hotel room to find his own Captain Rection. Medeja and Shakira got taken up to the mountaintop, they found Nirvana, and this was how the freaks reacted.
Oh God! Oh God!
This guy's an absolute legend. Scott says Booker T has no backbone. Book backed down from a match against Big Papa Pump at Slamboree, but then Tank Abbott shows up to get a piece of the big bad booty daddy, and this must mean Russo ordered Tank to take Steiner out. A punch to the jaw knocks Scotty down, but don't worry guys, Steiner will be back in just a moment. Too Cool take on the Bossman and Bill Buchanan next on Raw. On Nitro we've got a 4-way elimination tag team match. So Chronic stole the tag team belts after beating Shane Douglas and Buff Bagwell down on Thunder last week. This was the infamous New York Rules episode of Thunder where there were no referees during all matches, so Chronic are not officially the tag team champions. If you want to see what happened on that particular episode of Thunder, I've covered it already. It was featured on the very first episode of WCW Blunder, so have a look if you want to learn more. Harlem Heat 2000, the Harris brothers and the Mamalukes have been ordered to get those belts back tonight. Shane and Buff joined the commentary table as Chronic began fighting everyone off. Midway through the match we saw Scott Steiner going crazy backstage, which is always a joy to see. And back in the ring, the other tag teams began fighting with each other, and this allowed Chronic to easily eliminate the Harris brothers and the Mamalukes. Shane and Buff got in the ring as Chronic went after Harlem Heat. The champs were easily taken out, but they still managed to grab their tag team belts when sent to the outside. Stevie Ray then hit Big T with his slapjack, and this got absolutely no reaction from the crowd whatsoever. So I'm guessing Harlem Heat 2000 or no more as Chronic delivered the high times to Ahmed Johnson. 3 teams easily wiped out by Chronic, but hang on folks, here comes Scott Steiner and he takes out the tag champs with a double clothesline. This allows Chronic to steal the tag team belts once again, but check this out. Steiner gets in the ring and Cash takes a fucking exploder suplex from Big Papa Pump. Scott made it look so easy. Steiner tells Russo to send Tank Abbott out right now. Scott's holding Nitro hostage and he's not moving until Tank comes down to the ring. After a commercial break, Goldberg's music plays in the arena, and Tank imitates Goldberg as he makes his entrance. R&B security bring Tank down to the arena. Abbott even stands in position for Goldberg's pyro display, and it makes you appreciate how cool Goldberg looked when doing this. Tank finally gets in the ring, and he gets his ass handed to him by Big Papa Pump. Tank does try to fight back, but Scott's got his number here, and Steiner ends up putting Abbott in a chokehold as Tankberg starts fading out. Rick Steiner makes his WCW return and he tries to pull Scott away from Abbott. Scott does let go before sharing some words with the dog-faced gremlin, but as soon as Scott turns his back, Rick launches an attack. The commentators are even confused by this, and Schiavone says he stopped trying to make sense of this program a long time ago. And yeah, I feel the exact same way, Tony. Abbott knocks Scott out again and Russo's absolutely delighted backstage. He then tells Liz to get ready for her first ever match before telling someone else to be on standby. We don't know who this is, but we'll find out in just a moment, I'm sure. I was fully expecting the APA to cost Bossman and Buchanan their match here on Raw, but instead Too Cool won the match clean as a whistle. The crowd were very much behind Scotty and the Grandmaster, and the match itself wasn't all that bad. Grandmaster Sexy and Scotty Too Hotty have definitely found their calling, and Too Cool was the best thing to happen to both these guys in terms of their WWF careers. It was after the bell when the APA got their revenge. The Heels got chased back up the rampway by Bradshaw and Farouk, and Too Cool celebrated their win with a post-match dance. They even got some pyro this time around. Very fancy. There's a bit of dissension within the Radicalz. Malenko and Saturn aren't on great terms, and Chris Benoit's trying to ease the tension a bit. Eddie Guerrero comes in and he doesn't make things any better, to be honest. He thinks his Mamacita might have a friend for Dean, while Saturn should be nice to Malenko if Perry wants a title shot in the future. So Saturn and Malenko go into their next match against the Hardy Boys a little fractured, while over on Nitro we've got Daffney taking on Miss Elizabeth. During the Raw tag team match, Saturn was able to stop Jeff from performing a Swanton bomb on his partner, and Malenko applied the cloverleaf on Matt. Unfortunately, Saturn's back elbow sent Jeff right into Dean, and to make things worse, Saturn accidentally superkicked Stenko Malenko. Jeff then connected with that Swanton bomb, the Hardys win via pinfall, and tensions flared up again after the bout. Eddie and Chyna ran down to try and make the boys see sense, but this backfired in a rather surprising way, because Perry and Malenko attacked Eddie and Chyna, and this maybe means Eddie's now finishing up with the Radicalz. Maybe there's going to be no more Radicalz as Dean and Perry continue fighting with each other too, so who knows what's going to happen. To be honest, the faction pretty much stalled out only a few weeks after debuting, so it's maybe for the best that they break up. That Elizabeth versus Daffney match on Nitro, it doesn't actually happen. Daffney gets smacked across the face, she then gets choked out in the corner, and that mystery person Russo was talking to shows up to take Liz out. It's Medusa. Medusa doesn't get very far though, because Mona makes her Nitro return to get a piece of her former Teen Madness teammate, but Medusa quickly turns it around with a pretty dangerous looking back suplex. Liz grabs a chair, and you might be surprised to find out that Miss Elizabeth can swing a chair better than Hulk Hogan. Old Ginger Ref nearly gets taken out too, but Liz calms herself down and she goes to leave the ring. R&B security come down to take Liz back to Russo's office. So there you go, Medusa and Mona are back on WCW Nitro. One thing you may have noticed is that the women get featured way more on TV when Vince Russo's in charge. You may not like how they're presented, but they do get presented way more often. Jerry Brisco was told not to interfere in Pat Patterson's upcoming match. Pat has to take on Rikishi one-on-one, while on Nitro we've got a street fight, the Filthy Animals versus Hogan and Nash. Both matches turned out to be handicap matches. On Raw, Vince McMahon came out to announce X-Pac and Road Dogg would be joining forces with Patterson. McMahon then did a little dance as the Degenerates made their way down to the ring. And Rikishi did pretty well to fight off all three men, but this wasn't going to last forever. X-Pac almost took Rikishi's head off with a spin kick, and we also saw the dancey punch and dancey knee from Road Dogg. Patterson got brave though, and he went upstairs for a top rope move, but he ended up paying dearly for it. Just when Rikishi was building a comeback, he again got his head taken off with another kick from X-Pac, and it all ended with Patterson delivering a chair shot to Rikishi before he pulled his shorts down. Yeah, shitty skid-marked Y-fronts, ladies and gents. Peak humour right here, eh? Rikishi takes a sting face, Patterson has a great old time, and Real American plays in the arena as Pat also does his best Hulk Hogan impression. Too cool rundown to stop the embarrassment, but as far as DX said, this was a job well done. On Nitro, Nash and Hogan not only took on Kidman, Conan and Rey Mysterio, they also had to take on Mike Awesome. Even with these odds, the babyfaces were still able to maintain control, and moments into the match, Juventud Guerrero showed up for no reason at all. Serious, he just walked down to the commentary table and he shouted a lot. Hogan delivers a laughable chair shot to Conan before the New Blood guys eventually get out of the ring. They lure Hulk up the ramp into the backstage area. Juventud then earns his paycheck by getting in the ring and taking a jackknife from Big Sexy, but this also means Hogan's fell right into the New Blood's trap. Horace Hogan fights with Mike Awesome, so he shouldn't be a factor, but the Animals ambush Hulk with baseball bats and they throw Hogan into the trunk of their car before driving off. The boys get out of the arena, but they get stopped by a huge monster truck that says Goldberg on it. The crowd cheers as they think Billy Boy's gonna make his long-awaited return to WCW, but we don't actually see Goldberg on this episode of Nitro. It can't be overstated how many times the fans have chanted Goldberg's name since he took himself out of the game back in January, but the man himself is gonna return very soon, and you guessed it, WCW managed to totally botch his comeback. Our Raw main event features Chris Jericho once again defending his IC belt, this time against Chris Benoit. On Nitro we've got Jeff Jarrett defending his world title against Sting. The action begins right away over on Nitro. Sting makes easy work of Double J with two quick Japanese arm drags before sending the champ out of the ring. The crowd are on their feet and everyone wants to see Sting become the new world champion. WCW are using the elevated rampway for Nitro tonight, and Sting makes good use of it when performing a suplex. He then gets a bit too big for his boots though, and he crashes on the ramp when going for a high risk move. Jarrett grabs a chair and he goes to work on the icon. Sting gets battered all the way up the rampway and it looks like the challenger has no hope at all. The Stinger summons his inner Hulk Hogan though as he runs back down the ramp, and in fairness, his clothesline here looked pretty spectacular. Jarrett recovers first and he applies the figure 4 leg lock. Sting just doesn't give up the figure 4s, so he reverses the pressure before getting back to his feet. Sting's favouring his left leg, but he's still able to take the driver's seat. Jarrett goes down after 2 Stinger splashes, and the crowd goes nuts as Sting goes to apply the death lock. The move gets locked in, it looks like Sting's about to become world champion, but just like Spring Stampede, Vampiro appears from under the ring and the icon gets dragged under the canvas. Sting and Vampiro have a smoke, we're hotboxing under the ring, ladies and gents, and when Sting re-emerges, he's been covered in that red liquid. All Jarrett has to do is cover Sting for the 1-2-3 and Double J is still our WCW World Champion. The New Blood come out to continue the beatdown, but luckily for Sting, he gets a little help from his fellow millionaires Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash. These two destroy the entire New Blood faction more or less before Nitro goes off the air, but just before the fade out we see Tank Abbott and Rick Steiner running away as the Goldberg monster truck destroys their rental car. We're made to believe Goldberg's going full throttle behind the wheel here, and it's pretty impressive seeing this giant machine on wheels doing so much damage. But let's see if Billy Boy shows up next week. God knows WCW could do with a little something extra these days. On Raw, Triple H shows up wearing a referee shirt. He's going to act as a secondary official who's going to stay on the outside of the ring. Jericho makes his entrance looking super tired, while Benoit looks like he wants to tear Jericho's head off. But Y2J is going to try his best here as he puts Benoit down with a jumping forearm. Jericho lays the punches in and Kyoto has to pull him away. Jericho then misses a lion salt, but he does connect with a spinning wheel kick. Benoit then stops Chris from performing his springboard dropkick, and from here the challenger gains the advantage after throwing Y2J into the ring steps. Triple H applauds Benoit's efforts while watching the match unfold. Benoit performs a stiff hook clothesline, a back suplex and a backbreaker before stretching Jericho out on the mat. The two then get up and they have a scrap before Jericho misses a dropkick. In the corner, Y2J takes a few chops and Mike Chioda didn't appreciate this too much, so Mike pulls Benoit away and the official gets shoved to the mat. Triple H gets in the ring. It looks like he's telling Benoit off, but Hunter then punches Chioda in the face and Triple H is now our main match official. Benoit tries to cover Jericho a few times and Y2J has to quickly kick out, seeing as Hunter's performing fast counts. Benoit then performs 2 consecutive German suplexes, but Jericho counters a third and we see the walls of Jericho. As Jericho applies pressure, Stephanie makes her way down to the ring, and Hunter greets his wife as Benoit begins tapping out. I legit busted out laughing when Jericho got Hunter's attention back by kicking him between the shoulder blades. He also slapped Triple H across the face, but this was a bad move. Hunter whacks Jericho from behind, Benoit then applies the crossface, and even though Jericho didn't tap out, Hunter calls for the bell and Benoit wins his Intercontinental title back. Old Y2J just can't seem to hold on to a belt these days. Raw ends with the McMahon-Helmsley regime coming down to the ring and Chris takes a beating. Hunter performs a pedigree on the former IC champion while Stephanie slaps Jericho and Shane gets in a punch too for good measure. Vince gets in the ring and he's about to deliver a chair shot right to Chris's head, but the Big Show, the Dudleys, Too Cool and Rikishi run down and the heels get out of the ring. Still, it's a job well done for the McMahon-Helmsley faction. Jericho has lost the Intercontinental belt, so Mr. McMahon made good on his promise. Raw wins Reliving the War this week. We were missing the WWF Champion of course, but I like the ongoing story with Jericho having to defend his IC belt in multiple matches. The Goldberg teases on Nitro went down really well with the audience, and gotta say guys, I kinda get a kick out of Vince Russo being as hateable as humanly possible, but the WWF know how to put on more coherent, fulfilling wrestling shows. You still come out of Nitro feeling a bit disorientated. Series winner WWF Raw is now on 133 points, Nitro's on 79, and we've got 22 ties on the board. Raw dropped down to a 6.2 while Nitro jumped up slightly to a 2.8, not that it matters all that much. Next week on Raw, you better phone the Sniff Sniff delivery service because HBK's back in town. Bubba Ray Dudley phoned up and got a huge delivery, as you can see right here. The Rock's also back on Raw and he will be competing in the main event. And Luke, Al Snow and Steve Blackman are back together. It's going to be a wonderful week. On Nitro, we kick off the show with Vampiro vs Sting inside the House of Pain steel cage. Vince Russo, David Flair and Daffney pay a visit to the Flair residence in Charlotte, North Carolina. And speaking of Slick Rick, Flair's in the main event when he gets a title shot against Double J Jeff Jarrett. 2 good shows next week guys, and yes, Nitro's good too. So I'll hopefully see you on Thursday, and thank you very much for watching. Please take care.